So good evening and welcome to Warrington Wolves Facebook Live. Tonight we're going to be reviewing two fantastic servants for the club. First up, we've got a Hall of Fame member and a player that topped the charts for appearances and tries for any Warrington-born player, the flying wingman, Forster. Foz, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, mate. Surviving the lockup as everybody else is. Doing fine, doing well.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining us. So joining Mark and I is a player that signed for the club in 1987 before leaving to join Wigan in 1992. His other clubs include Oldham, Salford and Widnes. The self-proclaimed Prince of Ince, Martin Crompton. Crom, how are we doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I think I've been stitched up here, though, because I was led to believe I was having an interview with the ex-ref, Karl Fitzpatrick. I've been stitched up again here, Fozzie.
We've been done, haven't we, mate?
Yeah, proper, mate.
Yeah. You've been working on that since I've teed you up for this interview. You've been working on these one-liners, haven't you?
No.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Before we get into discussing your career and more, what are you doing yourselves these days? So, Foz, if you want to start off, obviously before lockdown, what are you doing to keep busy?
Well, obviously before it all started, the Super League years, we were part-time. So I was a joiner before then. I've just gone back to doing my joinery and a shop fitting manager. So a bit more pen and pencil again, but still on the tools every now and again. So it's good. I'm still back in the community, doing bits at the HJ, questions and answers, things like that. But yeah, I've gone back to joinery.
Crommy, what about yourself? What are you doing with yourself these days?
Well, I've been subcontracting for Balfour Beatty, doing some remedial work, you know, the new gas connections, what they're doing, this new gas line and that. So, yeah, I've been quite busy. And then, unfortunately, all this has happened.
Right, okay, let's take it right back. Foz, you joined the club in 1983, or made your debut in 1983. How did that come about? Obviously, you're a proud Warringtonian. What was the process? How did they spot you? How did you come to sign for Warrington?
It was like I did all the schools, the activities at rugby, football, basketball, everything like that. On the way home, I used to go to Vicky Park where the boys trained. Warrington at the time, you Ken Kelly's, Dave Chisnall, John Bevan. And I thought, oh, I fancy that because I was quite all right at rugby and I was obviously still quick then. But this was about 14 and a half, 15. Went over playing for Wolfston, taken from Latchford by Brian Chambers, who still does a lot for Warrington Rugby League. And I got scouted then by Snowy, the late great scout of his time. And I went, and I think it made me another debut. I think I was 15 and a half. So I think it was always going to be what I wanted to do, from seeing training on a Tuesday and a Thursday on my way home from school.
Do you recall your sign-on fee from giving up your amateur status to moving onto professional terms?
Yes, £3,000 signing on fee. I remember going into the local garage and buying a Ford Capri 2-litre GLX. It was good, and he was a family friend. He said, "Mark, you can't afford that." I said, "I can, Pete, I can afford it." And I put the cheque. He went, "When do you want it?" It was about like a scene out of Only Fools and Horses and the Rolls Royce one. He said, "How are you going to get it home?" I said, "Oh, I haven't thought of that. I can't drive." So, yeah, it was a little bit different then. Then you got your payments for your birthday. So if you timed it right and you kind of stretched it out, you could get your signing on fee in, say, October. And my birthday's in November, you get another 1,500 quid in November for a birthday signing on fee. So, yeah, it's completely different to nowadays, mate.
Super. Martin, you signed for the club in 1987. How did that come about? Obviously a Wigan lad. What happened?
I think it was October 86, to be honest, Karl. I think it was a couple of weeks after my 17th birthday.
You made your debut in 87 for first grade?
Yeah. I was only 17 when I made my debut. I was playing for the local Wigan amateur club, Wigan St Patrick's, well-known amateur team. And obviously I had a bit of interest in me from other various clubs. And I had the opportunity to go and, experience visiting various clubs. I first went to St Helens had a couple of training sessions with them, and they offered me a contract. They offered me £3,000, and when I passed my driving test, they offered me a car.
Wasn't it Capri, was it?
Pardon?
It wasn't a Capri, was it?
No, it wasn't a Capri, no.
It was an A1 Ford, wasn't it? A bloke walked in front of it with a flag.
So obviously, you know, like yourself, I was with my dad, and my dad didn't have much of an idea of how contract negotiations went and all that. I said there was no agents in them days. So we went and spoke to Warrington. Warrington, they offered me £3,000. They said, we'll give you a sponsored car as well when you pass your test. And they said, we'll also get you an apprenticeship on Wigan Council, a job. So I thought, that's pretty good, that. But then Wigan came in at the last minute, and I went to meet Jack Robinson and Maurice Lindsay, and I told them what I'd been offered, and Maurice said, well, what we'll do, Martin, we'll better that. We'll offer you £3,000, we'll give you a sponsored car, we'll get you a job on Wigan Council, and we'll also get your dad a job on Council. So my dad made me sound for Warrington. Didn't want with me dad.
But when you signed for when you made your first team debut for Warrington, I'll touch on myself for in a sec. Tony Barrett, head coach. I played briefly under Tony at Swinton when I was in between coaches. A real character. How did you find Tony?
Oh, fantastic. Proper old school. You know, just a good motivator. Obviously, like old school. I don't mean being disrespectful. That's who most of the coaches was them days. You know, play the game tough, be honest. You know, don't leave anything on the park. You know, put everything into it. And that was what Tony was about. And you know, I had nothing but the greatest respect for Tony. He's a great fella.
How did you find playing under Tony Barry Foz?
Brilliant. He was a great coach. If he had an issue with you, he'd kick it up the backside, punch it in the back of the head, and it was sorted, really. He was down-to-earth coach, and he's still like it now. Cromie will tell you about one of his famous sayings is, one in all in, you can't send 13 players off. So at 15 and a half, I'm thinking about this. I think we were playing Barrow at Warrington at Wilderspool. So I played in the centre. I said, don't worry, we've got an experienced winger looking after you, Rick Thackeray. You'll be sorted. 15 and a half, school kid. Played, it kicked off. I thought, I'm going to impress here. I'm going to go in, show that I can stand my own corner. Anyway, I got sent off running in. And it was with Norman Turley, the ex-Warrington fullback. So Tony loved me from that day. If you did what Tony wanted and you showed the skill and the aggression that he liked, you got on well with him. You still get on very well with him and his family to this day.
What was it like as young players entering those changing rooms at that time? You think some of the big personalities that was around the club during this period, the likes of Les Boyd, Kevin Tamati, Des Drummond, it must have been quite daunting for a young player going into that environment.
It was. I found it exciting and challenging because, you know, I think I was very fortunate because I had a lot of good people around me. Fozzie's been a friend for a long time. But people like Desi Drummond, who was an international player, down-to-earth guy, fantastic, and your great leaders in Mike Gregg, Bob Jackson, Kevin Tamati. You know, I thought I was very fortunate to be brought up in that era starting my career.
I think what we were lucky with, Martin, is that they were all great, experienced players, but none of them really had an edge.
No, all great lads.
Your Boydie, your Tamati, Andy Gregory, never really had an edge when they come to Warrington. It was always all on one level.
Yeah.
We'd welcome it, like the school kids in or the A and others and all of that. And they just treat them exactly the same. And it was all on one level. We had no real superstars, even though we knew they were internationals from Australia, New Zealand and Great Britain.
Yeah.
Foz, I want to ask you about a race that you participated in 1986. It was a sprint challenge held at Central Park to find out Rugby League's fastest man. You win the sprint. Couple of things. First of all, who was you up against?
It actually come around on YouTube. and it was in colour as well. Andrew Ettenhauser, Kerry Bowstead, and Barry Ledger.
Right.
So
what was the distance?
All the hard work, I think, beating the sprinters from the Yorkshire sides at Old Trafford. I think the semi-final was, and then went over to Wigan before the Great Britain-Australia game.
What was the distance?
From try line to try line, scored a try.
Well, did you have a ball in your hand?
Ball in the hand, yeah. You had to score it, proper try. It was good. It was unbelievable. The story goes that I keep telling that I had to win because the wife was sat in the stand with an Argos catalogue. So I needed the £1,000. But no, we were great, and we still have great times of talking about it. And someone from St Helens, an Australian, said, you never won and all the rest of it. But it's rugby league, friends for life.
Yeah. Who pushed you close? Do you remember?
Barry Ledger. But as you look at the end of it, there was a sign at the end of the pitch behind the post, and it says Labatt's Lager. So they said that's why me and Barry ran the fastest.
He wasn't going to run until he found out there was £1,000 up for grabs.
Do you know, you're right there, Crummy.
I know, you told me.
I'm not sure you would have got in that race, Crummy, to be honest with you.
Oh, thanks for that, Fitzy.
Guys, one game I do want to touch on, and I don't want to be playing this match, but the 1988 World War III, the game against Wigan on New Year's Day. Foz, you missed this game. Was you injured or suspended? What's the story behind that?
Unfortunately, I was suspended from a little bit of a fight I got in. I think it was the Marvin Edwards head-eye tackle where he slipped in the rain, and I caught Marvin under the chin. His gum shield flew into the Fletcher end, and I got 8 games.
8 games?
8 games. To be fair, it was my first game back from a 6-game ban at St Helens. So I was very fit then because I did a lot in the gym and everything. But I missed that one. And it was very unfortunate. Andy Goodway, as we all know, I tackled Cull. Cull's giving it the starfish. Andy decides to stand on Cull. And all of a sudden, it must have been like the jump start in his heart again, because Cull jumped up, chased him down the tunnel, and the mass brawl started again. Martin,
you played in this game, and it always appears that there's a bit of bad blood when we come up against Wigan. No doubt, health and respect between the two organisations. But on this occasion, it seemed there was extra spice.
It wasn't premeditated or anything like that. I think just typical derby. You know, New Year's Day. That's how it was them days. You know, all the crowd. I think there was over 12,000 on at Wilderspool, and it was. You could taste and sense, you know, in the air that something was going to happen that day. And like Fozzie said about Tony, you know, his motto was one in all in. I know there was a bit of personal hatred between a couple of players like Chachi and Goodway. But no, there was nothing set in stone that, you know, this is how the game was. It just unfolded like that. I have to go back to what Fozzie says about Tony Barry. One of his old sayings was, "They can't go about their heads." Because when we were kids, they used to say they can't go about their legs.
True.
Would you say it's fair to say that at the time that there was a genuine dislike against Wigan, or was it a bit maybe envious due to the success that they'd had? No.
Nobody spoke of anything like that. You know, we obviously had the utmost respect for Wigan. I mean, they was one of the best teams of that decade and that. So, but no, it was just how the game. You know, the fans was like baying for blood. You like I say, you could feel it, you could sense it, and it was just the physical side of it from both teams. And I think once the first, you know, brawl started, I think it was just a domino effect of it. That was how the game went, and I think it settled down a bit in the second half with the conditions, because it was quite heavy rain and very muddy pitch and that. And I think the focus then was just on trying to win the game. But it ended all square, which I thought was a fair result on the day.
Yeah, just following on from that, Foz, Wilderspool's nickname, the Zoo. How did it get that label?
It was given a lot by the Great Britain side of the time. that myself and Greg got called into the Great Britain side in '87. And myself and Greg were young kids. We were, what was we being? About 19, 20 maybe. And we got into the Great Britain side, and the rest of them was literally the Wigan side. As me and Greg got on the coaches, we were like scalded schoolboys. They all started making farmyard impressions. So it kind of stuck from them. When we got back to the Wilderspool, we told them about making the farmyard, and that got through to the fans. And the fans kind of got into the Wigan players' heads, calling it the zoo. But yeah, that's how it got its name. And it's also used to be called the House of Pain as well, which was a fans magazine that the supporters used to write. Because you had the front row of Boyd, Tamati and Jackson. There was your House of Pain.
Superb. Another game I want to touch on that you both actually played in was, again, against Wigan, was the 1990 Challenge Cup final. And again, facing another star-studded side. To get to the final, we had to beat Oldham in the semi-final. Again, at Central Park, we win 10-6. Actually, both you scored a try that day. Do you remember much about that game, Martin?
Yeah, it was probably once in a lifetime, the build-up to it. I was the travelling reserve that day originally. I was, they only had 2 subs then, so I was like 16th man, and I got told on the morning that I was expected to play, but unbeknown to them, I've been in a sauna for about 3 hours on Saturday morning prior to the game. I've been up till 4 o'clock in the morning playing cards with my gang of mates. Luckily, I didn't have any beer in me. But I just walked. I just walked it down to Central Park. Nice and casual, with my tracksuit on. My dad said, "Just put your gum shield in your pocket. You never know." Anyway, when I got there, they told me about 45 minutes before the game that I was playing. I remember speaking to Tony, the physio. What's his second name? Tony
Rothwell.
Tony Rothwell was the physio, and obviously I was concerned about dehydration. I said, I told him, I said, Luke, I'm not going to tell Brian Johnson. I've been in a sauna all morning, for a good 3 hours. And the tale has it, the lads who I was in the sauna with was watching the game in the pub, and they were all arguing. They wouldn't believe it that I've been in the sauna with them for 3 hours that morning and scored a tie. It was, it was surreal that day. It was crazy, absolutely crazy, because it was an hot day as well, very hot day.
Very, very hot day.
Professionalism at its best, that.
Yeah, well, like I said, Tony advised me. I had a Mers bar and a bottle of Lucasade. And I felt all right for about 15 minutes.
Super.
And then the game started.
Yeah.
Because that was probably the warm-up then, wasn't it? 15 minutes, a couple of laps up and down the pitch.
Lack of oxygen, I lost my memory.
Who dropped out, Martin? Do you recall?
It was Paul Bishop. He cut his arm. I don't know what the circumstances was, but he put his arm through a glass pane and he ripped all his, his tendons in his arm and his wrist and that. So I think they were lacerated. So it wasn't something he could, just cover up, bandage up. It was a serious cut, So unfortunately for him, unfortunately for me, I got the go ahead.
So we knock over Oldham, run our way to a Challenge Cup final. What was the prep like for us? You look at it these days and everything's put on for the players. In fact, we did a similar interview with Vinnie Anderson not too long ago, and he mentioned about the professionalism and everything was taken care of, friends, family, travel, accommodation, tickets, the whole lot. What was preparation like in those days?
In those days, a lot of us were still at work. We were a lot of us were part-time. And I remember the club saying we had to have the week off. So the senior players like ourselves said, well, we want our wages. And I think we got about 250 quid for the week's wage. But we had to do promotions. We ended up going Walton Golf Course, playing golf, which it was horrendous when you think of what we were doing. But it was great. We had a great few training sessions in Warrington. When we went to the hotel, everything was set out for you. Not as good as it is now, but we were new to it. Some of the lads hadn't been just come out of Cumbria, so they'd not been out of Warrington. They were in the squad. So it was great setup. We had high expectations of winning or running Wigan very close.
Martin, you said earlier you travelled down on the Thursday. What was preparation like for yourself? Obviously, a Wigan lad coming up against a star-studded Wigan side.
Yeah, we was confident. All the preparation was bang on. You know, we was having very good training sessions. We were short and often facilities wise, nice and relaxed. Even on the morning, I remember, on the day before, we went to Wembley Stadium, had a walk around, trying to get a feel of it. Obviously, it's not the same when it's empty, but it was just excitement more than anything. And like I say, everybody was confident. You know, that it was all positive talk. We really fancied our chances. You know, Mike Gregg was a great leader at the time. You know, like I say, we was all very confident.
And did you do the traditional get your new suits, get fitted out?
Yeah, Foz is still. I think Foz got married in these, didn't he? They're not buy one, Foz.
Hey, the last time he wore a suit, he was in court. He's still got it. I mean, it still fits him. Hey, I've kept my weight.
So moving on to the game, and there's an incident after 9 minutes. Bob Jackson hit Sean Edwards, possibly could be deemed late, possibly high. Fractures his eye socket and his cheekbone. However, unbelievably, Sean plays the rest of the game. Was it not intentional, but did Sean have a target on him? Obviously, very influential in how Wigan played. Was he targeted at all for that game?
Well, I don't. Go on, Foz.
Go on, yeah, you tell why you're an half-back.
Well, I don't think you could target anybody that day because obviously they were a star-studded lineup. You know, so I'm just like thinking back, like I can't recall any moments where Sean was targeted or Andy Gregg was targeted. Like I said, they did a threat across the field, all across the park. So I just thought personally, I thought it was just an accidental clash of heads. I thought Bob was committed to the chase. Sean was about to kick the ball. I didn't think he could pull out of it. I thought it was just an accidental clash of heads. But I think, you know, it was a big ask of him to complete the game like he did. It's tremendous effort and a lot of bravery involved. But I think that's how it was in them days. There's lots of times, I know myself, there's other players played on with serious injuries. And then after the game, you're out for weeks and weeks. And that's how it was them days.
You mentioned earlier about Mike Gregory. Foz, what was Mike Gregory like, first as a player and then second as a leader?
You could tell another player that was taken away from ourselves in the rugby league very, very too early, very, very soon. He was just a leader from day one. I remember himself and Andy Platt, when Warrington wanted to sign him. They came to the end of season awards, which is at Snookers over the way from Wilderspool. Sat us down with the young lads and all that. Made a great impression. And you could tell they were both 110% leaders. And Greg, he just was unbelievable. Lucky enough to play Lancashire, Great Britain, everything with him. Wherever he went into a situation, he mastered it. Whether it be in the gym, whether it be anywhere, social talking, anything. He was just a fantastic person and an awesome player. And we just made up to be able to say I played in the same side as him.
Yeah.
At this time, Brian Johnson was the head coach. Cromie, what was Brian like as a coach?
I had quite a few issues with Brian. I thought there was you will laugh, Foz. No, I thought that he was very personal on me. Whether it was his way of coaching and me being inexperienced, naive, like, you know, coming through as a young lad. I don't know, but I just thought he had certain issues with me, and I thought he was unfair. And I remember there was a time I actually boycotted 6 months of my career because of Brian at the club. I didn't agree with certain issues. I thought it was like some type of bullying what he was doing with me, you know. So I stayed away from the club. It was only about 19 going on to 20. That was like probably 6 months before the Challenge Cup final. Yeah, so it was a difficult time for me. You know, it was just a personal choice. I just had enough. I'd asked for a transfer. The club refused me. And like I said, you know, them days you were still contracted, so there's nothing you could do.
That's interesting, Martin. How did you come to a resolution then with with Brian? Obviously, you then played in the
Well,
Challenge Cup final.
Well, obviously, I mean, this was actually 6 months before the Challenge Cup final. I just realised I was in a no-win situation. You know, it was, I felt, I loved the game of rugby. I felt I was doing very well at the time. But I wasn't happy how I was being treated. And like I say, it was some form of bullying, which, you know, I took exception to. And like I say, after a period of time, I realised I wasn't going to win. I couldn't sit at home all the time. It was just one of them. I've got to, you know, make a decision and just go back and just put it behind me. To be honest,
guys, staying on the Wembley game. Do you recall your payment schedule for the game, the bonuses? What was you in line to receive if you was to win?
I think we were on £5,000 to win it outright, and I think we picked up £500 for losing. Yeah. When you first play at Wembley, there's a saying that many great players, superb internationals, play for 10, 15 years and never get to play at Wembley. So you're not really bothered about money, or the Warrington lads weren't. Obviously, the Wigan lads was a bit tight from there, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's about walking out at Wembley. It's about for me, the money never come into it. I was a Warrington lad representing my hometown, and it was just something that I'd always wanted to do. But I think it was 5,000 to win, and we got 500.
Yeah, he's bang on there. That's why it was 5,000 for a win, 500 for a loss. I actually earned more money on the coach coming home, playing free card brag with Ocker. I think I won £1,100 off Roy. True that, I did. Honestly, I couldn't go wrong at free card brag.
Just on that, on the way home, I mean, despite the loss, the crowds that greeted you back in Warrington was incredible. We've seen some of the images recently that Warrington Guardian have put up on the website. Quite remarkable, the actual turnout to welcome you back. Was that expected? Was it a surprise?
Yeah, it was a big surprise, to be honest, because obviously we felt, we'd let everybody down, because the occasion does get to you. I don't care what anybody says. It's a massive occasion, and the highs and the lows, it's a mile apart. And obviously, when we saw so many at the town hall, it was overwhelming. Absolutely, fantastic, and it did pick us up. But me personally, it took me a while to get over that game. I was so disappointed. I felt Brian made a boo-boo by playing me at 6. I thought he should have put Bishop at 6 and played me at 7. I was always more of a threat at first receiver, and I think that was the first game I'd ever played at stand-off as a professional.
Wow.
At Challenge Cup, and I was only 20 years of age, so I took it to heart. I was very disappointed with myself. I was confident going into the game. I was really confident. I thought we could win it. I was expecting a good performance from myself, but I just looked back and I think I froze. I think the occasion got to me, and I've never ever watched the game. Never.
I've never watched it completely. I've seen snippets on YouTube or Facebook, things like that.
Yeah, but I've never actually sat down and watched the full game.
Foz, what is it like for you? Obviously, being a Warrington born and bred lad, seeing those scenes coming back to Warrington again, despite the loss, but received, as heroes.
We never expected anything like that. You knew you got a homecoming if you won the cup, and there'd be thousands upon thousands lining the streets. But when we got beat, we thought, right, okay, we've got our best shot. We're all young lads. 1,000 people come, we'll be made up. And there was something like 40-odd, 50-odd thousand throughout the streets of Warrington. But like Cromby said on the way home, we had a few bottles of champagne and a few games of cards. And I don't know whether Cromby remembers, because he was young, we actually remember sellotaping one of the players to the bus seat. And it wasn't when we'd done the open top tour and we got to the town hall, his wife asked where he was, and we still left him at Woolston at the hotel, sellotape to the seat. And until that day, he won't talk to you about it. But he's a player. Unfortunately, he's not with his wife no more. Well, we were all characters of the game. We just forgot to unsellotape the player from the back of the bus. So his wife had to get a taxi and go for him. So it was awesome. Everybody from your house, your dad, who your mum and dad work with, or your auntie and uncles, you seem to pick people out in a crowd as well. It was just, I've got goosebumps now thinking about it, because that's to live on Manchester Road now, which was the main route for the open top bus.
Foz, first of all, which player was it?
Well, you'd be able to check it out with Chris Rudd. Chris Rudd was one of the young lads. A story as well, Roy Lester took him jogging, the squad. I remember two of them, Gary Chambers and Chris Rudd, who were the Cumbrians that hadn't been out of Cumbria, never mind, what about Warrington? So we took him for a jog in 80 odd 90 degrees heat, Wembley. If one of us had fell off the bus when we were walking round, would have been snookered, because we had to wait for him to get back, then go for a shower. We were all suited and booted, sat on the bus. Roy Lester got him lost, assistant coach. They come back, bright red heads on him, sunstroke, the lot. So Ruddy was one of them, wasn't he?
Could have been worse. Could have been worse, Foz.
Into Wembley.
Foz, it could have been worse. He could have gone out of sauna.
Well, I was going to beat it, but you know, I played at Wembley and I dislocated my shoulder trying to tackle Martin O'Fire in the middle of the field. I don't know what I was doing in the middle of the field, and I definitely don't know what Martin was doing in the middle of the field. But I stretched out, dislocated my shoulder, and Tony Rothwell, come on, put it back in. BBC zoomed in, and I'm swearing, Tony saying, right, come on, Foz, you're coming off. I said, Tony, told me 10 years get here, I'm not coming off. So I was actually out of the game for 8.5 months after the Wembley final. The surgeon waited at the top of the tunnel. He said, we'll operate on that tomorrow. I said, Doc, I said, you won't be able to find me tomorrow. I'll be in a gutter somewhere. And as it worked out, we were not quite in the gutter, but we were in a mess. 8.5 months later, we're back at Central Park, New Year's Day, Warrington and Wigan. The lads had beat Widnes in the Regal Trophy semi-final the week before. Both wingers, Neil Kenyon and Paul Williamson, had scored. So I was quite happy that I wasn't going to be playing this New Year's Day, even though I was in the squad. So, like Martin said, you go for a quiet drink, but I decided to pick the social club at Wildersfield, which my wife's parents run at the time. So I was drinking with the whole of the Warrington fans till about 4 o'clock in the morning. Goes home, sleeps, shower, trying to get the smell of beer off me. Goes to the club, gets on the bus, sits there on my own, all nice and quiet. Scootles off to Wigan, Central Park, in the dressing rooms, in the shower, out the way, staying the best I can, staying out of John O's way. And he come and stand behind me. Said, Foz, you're playing today. I went, what? And all I'm thinking about is drinking till 4 o'clock with all the speckies. I couldn't talk at 4 o'clock. So this is about, say, 1:15, 1:30 of the biggest game of that day. So 8.5 months later, he decides to pick me. So I'm begging him to pick the young lads who scored and all the rest of it. So no, he said, Foz, you're playing. And as I run out, you could hear the echo go round Central Park. He was drinking with us. And when you stand in the corner as a winger, you can hear everything they're saying. And they were all bagging me. But it was at the top end. We're defending the top end away from the dressing room. And I got one of my usual passes off Dean Bell on our own 5-yard line. Because Dean Bell was supposedly one of the best centres I ever had. I got more interceptions off Dean Bell than anybody else. So I had to run 95 yards to do this. But all the way, Joe Lydon's chasing me, Mark Preston's chasing me, and I'm thinking, all this beer from last night's going to come up. And I've legged it. And Gary Chambers, again, we're back on the Cumbria, he said, once you got it, Foz, he said it was a waste of time. No one was going to catch you. I said, Gary, I said, I wanted you to carry me back. I was out till 4 o'clock. So all the fans then said they were going to take me out till 4 o'clock before every game. Anyway, Jono found out and fined me about 150 quid. So, yeah, mine after Wembley was 8.5 months dislocated shoulder.
Wow. So Martin, after making 81 appearances for the club, you joined Wigan in 1992. He actually goes through a tribunal dispute between the two clubs, and Wigan end up paying 65,000. Tell us a little bit about that, Martin. How did that come about?
Well, it was, like I say, it was the days when the Bosman ruling was just about to start. You know, the famous footballer who took the club to the European court and obviously won his case. He was like saying that they were denying him employment and freedom of employment, should I say. And it was, they didn't quite understand the rules and the ins and outs, you know, of how it worked. And obviously, like Fozzie will tell you, when we actually signed from amateurs to professionals, you was committing yourself for your full career, basically. They held you as a registered player. You know, there was no way of getting out of it. And then all of a sudden, the Bosman ruling kicks in, and you know, it throws a lot of things up in the air. And basically, you know, the clubs couldn't agree. I think Warrington wanted something like 140,000. Wigan offered 35. And then you know, they both give evidence, pros and cons of, you know, what's good and what's bad. And they just come to a decision of Wigan had to pay 65,000. But I think there was just an handful of cases, you know, in that period of time where it went to, I can't tell you how many, but I don't think there's so many actually went to a tribunal, and you know, clubs had to pay a fee.
So you joined Wigan basically to fill Andy Gregory's spot. Andy Gregory who moved on to Leeds. You're joining a club there. They've had, I mean, lots and lots of success in many different competitions. What was it like in comparison to being at Warrington?
I'd gone from, like Fozzie said earlier on, like a family environment, close-knit environment, to an environment where egos, you know, there were big egos, and obviously they were great players. But, you know, I've always been a down-to-earth lad, and I could never, ever see myself of getting carried away, even at any success or where I get. I've always been level-headed, down-to-earth, and, you know, I've gone from that environment, which close-knit at Warrington, to like a very competitive, you know, ego culture. It was a winning culture. You know, every training session was very competitive, and you know, I was obviously playing with the best players in the world at the time.
You remain at Warrington. One season I want to touch on is the 93-94 season. We finished joint top alongside Wigan and Bradford. However, Wigan clinched the title due to a superior points difference. What was it like during that time? Do you know what I mean? We was so close to winning the championship.
Again, it was it came down to Warrington and Wigan again. I think it was Paul Cullen who went into a tackle again on Andy Goodway. I think it was at the time, like Cromie said before. They had who was the best second rower, and some had built Andy up and a lot had built Cull up. Cull got penalised for dropping on with the knees. And for some reason that day, Jonathan Davies was captain. I'm sure whether it was his last season or whatever. And he went to ask the referee. And the referee said, I'm not having that. And marched us 10 yards nearer to our post. Fran Obotka was kicking that day. He'd have probably kicked it from halfway line, but giving him 10 yards. So anyway, that made it a draw. And that took us top of the league until the points difference. And then Bradford, I think we all got together in the Red Lion or the Mull and watched Bradford. So it was difficult, but we were almost there. We were proud of our efforts all year. And again, it comes down to a Warrington-Wigan game.
Jonathan, you mentioned Jonathan Davies there. That year he was the man of steel. What was Jonathan like to play with?
Again, he was just an awesome player. He was one of the best in the world at both Union and League. And yet he had no edge. We knew he was coming as a big signing from Widnes. I think it was his record at the time. He'd done what he did at Widnes and then followed on to Warrington. And we just hoped, really, he'd bring us some more winning money, because that's what we were on at the time, winning and losing money.
I like that approach. Martin, by this time you'd moved on to Oldham. What was it like to play against Warrington during this season? I'll just mention some of the names that was in and around the team at that time. Davis, obviously, Easton Harris, Bateman, Foz, Roper, Ellis, Mackey, Derbyshire, Sanderson, Shelford, Phillips. So a pretty solid team.
Yeah, I mean, you only have to look at through history. Warrington's always had a good squad, always had a good team, and them days it was no different. You know, you knew there was always very physical, whether it was at Wilderspool or the old Watershedings ground or the Boundary Park football ground. It was always going to be a physical challenge, and I'd like to say that probably that's no different to today's game. And you know how Warrington approach. It's a well-known fact. It's in the blood, in the DNA, isn't it?
False. So after 260 games in charge, Brian Johnson moves on, and in 1996, John Dorahay comes in. John didn't last long at the club. What went wrong for him?
To be fair, I think he lost the players, and we didn't really. After John O's ways of doing things, which I thought was well ahead of his time, John Dorahay kind of took us back, and some of the senior players at the time on the internationals couldn't really get on with John. And he also had Alex Murphy, who was the manager. So they brought somebody back from '74 and somebody over from Australia who'd not long retired from Hull KR, I think John played for. So it was a difficult time for the club, and a lot of the players just didn't get the way John wanted us to play.
What was Alex Murphy like playing under during this period? Appreciate he's not the head coach, but he would have had an influence on the playing squad.
Everybody's seen the video where he stood at Lee and he hits every single player. He wanted to do that a few times, but luckily enough, he never, with some of the senior players. Love him. You've got to love Alex Murphy. What he's done for the game. He's an ambassador for the game. But he was just in the past. He thought he could raise his voice, which he did, and people had jumped to it. But he was playing Kiwi internationals. You had Tutupu Vagana. He didn't really like Tutupu Tony because he knew how much money Tony was on. So it was hard for Murph. He was a great manager. Whatever you wanted, he got you. But he thought this shouting and bawling at training kind of worked, and we wasn't used to that.
I think I'd just like to say, you know, we're all ex-players and we all understand how the game works and that. But what I've experienced is with different coaches is that, you know, I'd say somebody's a good coach and another player wouldn't agree with me. And I think it's the relationship and trust on certain individuals, how they deal, you know, with certain situations. And, you know, it's all about relationship, trust and bonding. People talk about how good John Moley was as a coach. Don't get me wrong, I'm not calling John Moley as a coach, but he wouldn't be in my top three of people who I've played under. Just off the fact that I felt as though I didn't have a relationship with him, but also his coaching methods wasn't what I'd say up there with people who are playing under, like, you know. So I think it's very difficult for coaches, very difficult, and because obviously you're looking after a group of players, and everybody's got a different mentality, haven't they?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, that, Martin. So in 1996, there's a seminal moment for the sport. The birth of Super League and the move from winter to summer. Mark, obviously you're still at Warrington. Cromer, you're at Oldham, or Oldham Bears as they're now known. What was it like being involved at the game during this period, Martin, with the razzmatazz and everything that the hype around the game?
Well, believe it or not, I can actually remember the day Maurice Lindsay announced it. I was at my parents' house, and obviously we had teletext in them days, and it was all over the teletext on the television. Like, you know, players was going full time. We was going to move into a summer era. Obviously, they were trying to do the pros and cons and how we get to that summer. The clubs was talking about financial situations, you know, would there be a gap? And then they came to the conclusion where we'd have a short winter season just to get us over. And then obviously have, like, say, 6-8 weeks rest and then get back into the summer rugby, like, you know. But it was interesting. It was exciting. Everything, you know, all the razzmatazz, what came along with it. And obviously us players the opportunity to go full time was, a massive jump, especially for some players. It was like, full time training. It was a shock to the system for a lot of players.
Foz, during this time, there was mention of mergers, clubs merged together. Warrington and Widnes becoming Cheshire, Oldham and Salford becoming Manchester. What was your thoughts on that, and was you aware of it?
Yeah, obviously you was aware of it. The club spoke about it, and at the time, a lot of the clubs were being quite open, letting you know the details, not the ins and outs of it by any. Nobody wanted to play for Warrington players. Never wanted to play for Widnes. Widnes didn't want to come here because half of us would have been all made redundant. You'd have had 50% of each club being made redundant, players as well as staff, medical staff, everybody. So yeah. I'm quite happy that we stayed as we were.
I have quite a funny tale regarding that. When we was asked to merge with Swinton, I think it was Swinton, not Salford. Anyway,
I think it was Salford. Swinton, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think it was Swinton, wasn't it?
No, Salford.
Was it Salford? Anyway, we had an Irishman, German, Jim Quinn, and he was a bit of a character, typical Irishman, and he was always very, very careful with his money. Anyway, then this idea come out of Super League and clubs merging, as they were saying, and he was asking Oldham to become a Manchester team, represent Manchester. The idea was like, oh, it sounds great. This, like, it's on a par with that of football. But the reality was, it was never going to happen. And what happened was, we found out that Salford had something like, they was averaging, say, 2,500, 3,000 spectators, and they got about 18,000 signed this petition. And Oldham, we was averaging about 3,000, and we got 28,000 signed this petition. And Jim Quinn said, "Where the are all these supporters who signed this petition? Why don't they come over on a match day?" 28,000.
Brilliant. During this period as well, and it's later been dubbed the Super League War, a dispute down under between the two Australian bodies, Rupert Murdoch's Super League and Kerry Packer's ARL. And the two respective bodies were trying to recruit players and throw in a hell of a lot of finances and some hefty figures, both at players down under and also players based in the UK. Martin, did you get offered any significant contract to go down under for Super League or the ARL?
No, there was talk of it, because obviously I was captain of Oldham, and it was like, like I said before about agents. The agents come out of the woodwork. No players had agents, very few anyway. And then all of a sudden, these agents, they was touting players about and trying to get certain individuals. But I'd like to say that probably the majority of the people what got what the classed as loyalty payments, like for signing a pre-contract, was like Great Britain internationals, experienced players like Ellery Hanley, Andy Gregory, Sean Edwards, Gary Connolly at the time. The majority of them players was the guys who got the chunks of the money. But no, I didn't receive anything. I was ill advised, as they say.
Did you have an agent at all?
Yes, he was a secret agent. I never found him. Cost me a fortune.
Foz, did you ever have an agent in your career?
No. It didn't really. I was getting towards the end of my career when agents were coming in. They all come out and followed Super League, and they were coming from here, there, and everywhere. Everybody's uncle or second cousin was going to be an agent, and they all wanted money off you. And at the time, they weren't really getting you anything. If you went into the Warrington board, Peter Ironman and all these guys, you knew what you wanted. You knew what you was going to get. If you wanted 50, you went in for 70. They offered you 30, and you met in the middle, and you got what you wanted. You got no more or no less. So I'd never really had an agent, no.
It's interesting that. So obviously you've gone in and negotiated your own deal, dealing with the chief exec, chairman, owners, whatever it may be at the time. Crompton, what was your experience going into boardrooms like and negotiating?
Well, it's intimidating, isn't it? Like, so it's new to you. Don't forget that it's part and parcel of their jobs, isn't it? You go into like a boardroom, and there'd always be at least two or three of them, and you're there on your own, or with, in my situation, it was always my dad, and like I said, my dad was clueless. He couldn't read or write, so how the fuck he was going to negotiate my contract, I do not know. But no, it's like I say, you go into them boardrooms, and it's very intimidating.
As you touched on it there, who would you deal with at Warrington in relation to your contracts? Admittedly, during the lengthy period you was at the club, it would have been different people at different times.
There was the main one. Was your chairman, because at the time it was all his money, all Peter Iron's money and his sponsorship. So we always dealt with Peter. Sometimes you met with the board. If you were getting close, it was going to be an argument. If you asked Eric Waddle for a car, extra money, or anything, you couldn't hear him if he was on his deaf side. But you asked him if he wanted a gin and tonic, you could hear it from the other side of the room. So they were the characters that we were dealing with. You knew what you wanted. You roughly knew what you was going to get, and it just kind of did away with the agents.
You both teamed up again in 2000 in the international scene. You both played for, or selected in the squad for the 2000 World Cup for Ireland. What was that experience like, Martin?
Enjoyable. I sucked more Guinness than Georgie Best in them 4 weeks. No, it was a great experience. You see, it's like a refresher, isn't it? From the normal. It's like when you're playing club rugby, you with majority of the time you're with the same players day in, day out, and then all of a sudden you're pitting up with lads who you've played against, majority of your career, and it's like freshens you up, and it's like exciting and gives you a chance to get to know people, and obviously make friends and get friendships. I mean, some of the people we've met through the international is, friends for life, and it's priceless. You can't put a price on it.
I was speaking to Brian Kearney yesterday, and I was explaining that I'm interviewing you both today, and he said if he was to pick an international squad to go away on camp, Martin, you'd be the first name on the sheet. He said absolute nothing to do with playing.
Thanks for that. So what you're saying is I'm a player, but I'm a good crack.
No, I think you're great at both. But you actually pushed England relatively close. You got to the quarter-final, eventually going down 26-16. But I had a look at the squad last night, and it was a handy squad. I'll just name some of the players that were in that squad. Terry O'Connor, David Barnhill, David Bradbury, Brian Kearney, Michael Eager, Chris Joint, Johnny Lawless, Tommy Martin, Jamie Matthew, Barry McDermott, Steve Prescott, Luke Ricketson, Ryan Sheridan, Danny Williams, was at Melbourne at the time, and Michael Withers. So certainly a handy squad for us.
Yeah, and we great characters again. Once you come into, like Cromie said about the international side, everything was fresh, and you kind of it boosted you for another couple of weeks. Even if you carried all your knocks, you went into Ireland camp. I remember one story, we were in Belfast, and he told the team, whatever, don't go on the other side of the road. And within 2 hours, we all separated into twos and threes. An hour later, we were all in this pub that he told us not to go in, but the full squad was in the pub, and Seamus McCallion was playing the drum and everything. They absolutely loved it. You see different people's, like Tommy Martin's way of training, Barry Terry's, the Australians, Campo. It just gives you a boost for a few more weeks when your season's nearly over.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, Mark, in 2000, after providing outstanding service for Warrington since 1983, you leave the club. How did the exit come about? Was it expected? Did it come out of the blue? What happened?
Well, it definitely wasn't expected. Before I went into the World Cup squad with Ireland, I agreed a contract with Darryl van der Velde. I was halfway through my second testimonial, which had never been done as a player. So I'd agreed the same money as the year before. I went away for this for the Friday. I went home to spend time with the family before going into camp. And he said, come in and sign it on the Monday. So I did a presentation at Beam Junior School, went in to sign it, and by the time I got there about 9:45, he told me he'd changed his mind. He could sign 3 players for what he was going to give me as a 38-year-old. Them 3 players, I think they had a handful of first-team games, which I think between 3 players made about 17 first-team games. And they said they could get them for what they were going to pay me. So I left under a cloud, and it was only a few years ago that it came out, and the Warrington fans kind of forgive me. They all thought I'd left Warrington for Widnes, not being forced out the back door. And it was upsetting that Danny Farrow, he did 3 years, nothing against Danny. He was a player going back to Australia. He got lifted, he got a glass tankard, he got everything for 3 years. And I'd done 20 seasons and got shown the back door on a cold Monday at Beamon's secondary school.
Just so you know, follows me from myself and the board and everyone at Warrington Wolves, I mean, the service that you provided is absolutely recognised, and you've been a phenomenal servant for the club, mate. And I'm sure that you're very well respected now across all Warrington Wolves supporters. It's finished him off. That he's gone.
I'm still here. Go on, you yourself and the board and what?
Yeah, I was saying myself and the board, I mean, absolutely recognise the fantastic contribution and servants that you was for the club. I mean, incredible from 1983 to 2000 is very, very special. And I mean, I can't see such a length, a tenure lasting so long like that. So, and you're very well respected across all Warrington Wolves supporters, certainly the ones that I speak with. And it's great to still see you at the Halliwell Jones comparing in the East Stand.
Thank you. Cheers. I'm loving every minute of it.
Good man. So you mentioned there, Cromie, about crossing the divide and going to Widnes in 2001, and you're joined by none other, Mr. Martin Crompton. Cromie, so you joined Widnes as well as he set out on a mission to gain promotion to Super League. What was your time like at Widnes?
Oh, I loved it. It was David Hume was the head coach. I signed for David Hume at the time, and I think the job was a bit too big for him, with him being a local lad. All the expectations. He didn't really get the best out of everybody, and that was nothing to Yoma. He's a great guy, certainly a good coach. It just didn't seem to happen for him, and I just think it was like, the expectations of being a Widnes lad, obviously being a very successful ex-player as well. The crowd demanded instant success, and it wasn't happening, and the board made a decision. They brought Neil Kelly in. And the rest is history, as they say. It was we went on a good run. He signed a few decent players, Neil, and we turned the corner and obviously won promotion to Super League.
Foz, you touched on it then. Look, you Warrington to the core. There's no doubt in that. What was it like then going playing for Widnes?
It was strange because obviously I'd left Super League on a full-time contract. I wasn't working, but Widnes were training at night. So I was hanging around all day and training at night. So that was very hard. And as a winger, you obviously stand in the corner, and the Widnes fans kind of took to me in the streets and that I was leaving Warrington and going to Widnes. But every time I stood in the corner for the first 3 games, they booed, they threw things at me and everything. So in the end, I was in the social club where we always went after the game, Martin. And I said, why are you booing me? I said, I've signed for Widnes, I'm scoring tries, I'm playing okay. He said, you're still wearing your Warrington gum shield. And that was how bad it was at the time. I had a primrose and blue gum shield, but I had to get a black and white one. So the following home game, I got a black and white gum shield, and he applauded me and cheered me and all said, thank you. But it was that close of a knit. It was like the Warrington and Wigan. Then it was Warrington and Widnes.
So you both started Widnes that season and eventually gained promotion for Widnes. Martin, you stay on at Widnes, if I remember correctly, in a coaching capacity, don't you?
Yeah. I retired. I got offered a full-time contract when we actually got to, it got confirmed that they'd been promoted to Super League. But I just had enough. I was only 31. I was still quite fit, looked after myself and that, but the ACL took a lot out of me. And when I looked back, I thought, I don't want to put myself through that position again. Like, you know, it was a very, very lonely place for 9-10 months training on my own. And, you know, it was very difficult and testing, especially when, you know, you've played a lot of rugby during your career. I mean, I've had other injuries, don't get me wrong, but this one was a bad one at the end of my career, and it just made me realise there was more to life than rugby, and I made the decision to, you know, I got the opportunity to be assistant coach with Neil for 2 years, which I enjoyed. It was surprising. I wish I'd have done it earlier. You know, it's a different outlook, a totally different to being a player.
Foz, end of 2001. Where did you go from Widnes?
Again, Cromie was saying, we had a good team spirit. I'd done my ankle playing for Ireland again. I could have played in the final, but I thought it was unfair. So we sat down with Neil and said, Neil, I don't want you to drop the young players that were playing at the time.
You'd not been drinking again, had you, till 4 o'clock in the morning?
No. I couldn't do it then. I was only young when I could do that. But yeah, there was players that played well in the semi-final, and I was about 95% fit. And I just said to Neil, we sat down in his office, said, there might be a different story from the assistant coach's side. You never know, Cromie. But I said, look, mate, I'm not 100% fit, so I won't take somebody else's spot. We shook hands, and we've been best friends ever since.
I love his honesty.
That's it. Laughing there. Is more to this tale than Foz's
Listen, will the real man Forster please stand up? Please stand up.
I've been watching all these politicians talking their way around this COVID.
Used to be a saying about Fozzie, he can tell a lie and prove it.
You taught me well.
Top man.
You was teaching the master.
Brilliant. Fellas, you both had extensive careers. I'm just going to ask you a few questions on this now, reflecting back. First of all, who was the best player that you played with? Martin, I'll start with you.
You know, obviously, all the dinners what you go to when you're speaking and that's always the question what you get asked. And personally, I just think it's unfair. You know, different positions have different qualities, offer different, you know, contributions to the game. And I mean, I'm not just saying it, but look at what Fozzie did. 20 years at one club. I know it's never been done. It'll never be done again. You know, so that to me is it's greatness. It's a great player. So it's unfair. I mean, if you wanted me to say,
yeah, I do. I don't want you to bottle it.
The best player.
Yeah, don't backtrack now, Cromie.
No, what I'm trying to say is different players offer different contributions,
yeah.
Don't they? They have different greatness. Like Martin O'Fire, his charge scoring, his speed, probably one of the best players I've played with. But overall, I'd say John Woods. John Woods was a big factor for me, learning the game. He was obviously my half-back partner when I was, you know, in my early days at professional at Warrington, and I was lucky enough to do nearly 2 seasons with Woody. He was at the end of his career, and God knows what he must have been like when he was in his early 20s, because the man was a freak, absolute freak.
Foz?
Yeah,
like Martin said, I'm going to be looking at centres, maybe fullbacks, the ones you link up with. Dave Lyons was one of the safest fullbacks with Steve Prescott that I've ever played alongside. And you do get that rapport with your fullback. But centres, you could look at Gary Mercer was strong, probably Alan Bateman. But yeah, it's going to be all my centres I've ever played with. You very rarely play with a bad one. We're all characters of the game in some way. Or you could have an half-back like Jiffy, Andy, Martin, Paul Bishop. They can make your game or they can break it. So I think everyone's a character.
And who did you come up against, Foz?
Probably Eric Growth as a young kid. I got up and I thought, I'm going to be Billy Big Stones here and get in front of Eric, and it wasn't wise. I was out for 3 weeks with concussion. So anybody, you give like Martin and Jason Robinson, you give them respect. You give every player respect. But I'd probably say Jason Robinson would probably be the one because of his size, his speed, his mobility. You could kind of read Martin, just don't give him the outside, give him the inside and send him back to one of his centres. He wouldn't go much further, but if you ever give him the outside, he was putting it down under the H's. But Jason could score from anywhere, and he was well respected and still is.
Martin, the best player you played against?
Played against? Ooh, probably Ellery and Andy Gregg. Opposite, like scrum half Andy Gregg. But the best player probably Ellery. Phenomenal.
In what way, Martin? What was so special about him?
I mean, obviously he had this aura about him. You know, he was like invincibility, and his try scoring feats, his reading of the game, you know, his strength, his fitness. He just had all the qualities, and he was a great leader as well.
I know we spoke about a number of coaches throughout this interview, and it may be difficult to pick out one, but Foz, the best coach that you played under?
I'm going to go with Tony Barrow, early doors, because he signed me and he taught me a lot of things that I've carried through till today. But for brains ahead of his time, I'd say Brian Johnson. Even though we had our fallouts, we had our upsets like Martin and Jono did, we always sorted them out. But he was years above of his stature.
Martin?
Neil Kelly, because he got rid of Foz.
You're saying it was your decision.
I had to draw you in for that, brother. Bob Linder was a great coach. He was only here a short while, but
he had a bit older.
Yeah. His experience from playing like State of Origin and Test rugby, you know, he was a great guy too, level-headed. You know, wasn't no ego at all about him. He was a really top bloke, and but he knew his stuff. Got him.
Fellas, to finish off, what do you make of this current Warrington team? Are we good enough to lift that trophy at Old Trafford?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this could be a positive, this breakdown. Obviously, they're all training. They've all got the diets and everything. It's like a mini pre-season. I mean, we don't know when the season's going to start again. Are we going to get to Old Trafford? Is anybody going to get to Old Trafford? Is the Challenge Cup going to run? We don't know yet. But it could all spur a lot of teams on. And I think Warrington's got the characters in the side and in the coaching staff and backroom staff to go quite a distance.
Martin?
Yeah, they've certainly got enough quality to win. The only thing that what questions me about the current squad is that I think there's some kind of mental issue somewhere, whereas they seem to choke it sometimes. You know, I don't like saying bottle it. I just think they can't take that extra step for win that grand final, and I think that's the only stumbling block. They've certainly got enough talent. They're certainly good enough to win it, to win any competition. Like I say, it's going over that bit of a stumbling block, which seems to just hold them back on the big occasion.
That's interesting. If we look back at the 2019 Challenge Cup final last year, I mean, went in there as, I mean, raging underdogs, but yet come away with the trophy.
Yeah.
Just Old Trafford, it's something that we've not conquered yet.
Yeah, well, obviously history speaks for itself, doesn't it? And it's not. This is not an answer thing. I just think, you know, you look at them and you think they're well more than capable of good enough. You know, they've got everything set in place. They've got great coaching set up, obviously fitness, conditioning, but the quality in the team. You know, if you look to them man to man, they're as good as any team in Super League. So, you know, you've got to ask the question: well, how come they've not won a grand final?
Good stuff. Fellas, thank you so much. That was fantastic. A great insight into your careers and more. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you soon at the HJ once the
Fitzy, you didn't ask the question, who was the hardest player you played with?
Martin, who is the hardest player you've ever played against?
No, with.
What, with?
What? Yeah, well, I'm sure Fozzie will agree with this. Kevin Tamati.
Right.
Definitely.
Probably the hardest man I've ever seen on a rugby field. But I'll just tell you a tale about a guy called Alan Rathbone. Remember Rathbone?
Yeah, I do.
Was absolutely lunatic. Was playing in an 18 game on a Friday night at Wilderspool. Anyway, the doctor, you remember Dr. Death, Foz? Dr.
Death, yeah.
He said, Alan, you're going to have to come off. We're going to have to take them 2 teeth out. It's going to turn septic. And he's going, I'm all right, leave me alone. And the doctor's pleading with Alan. We're going to have to take both these teeth out, Alan. Well, it's going to get serious. He said, do it at half time. Anyway, they took one out of his elbow and one out of his kneecap.
See, that's why he's in every tour. Can you still levitate, Crommer?
I can't. I did one today, actually.
That's how you did it, ACL, levitating.
Brilliant.
Guys, brilliant. Now, thank you so much. Superb. Please stay safe, guys. Excellent.
Cheers.
Brilliant.
Well done, Pops.
Stay safe, Promise. Stay safe, Adam.
You too, my mate. Nice to see you. Top man. Love you.
Thanks, that lad. That's brilliant.
Cheers, guys.